You're doing it. And because you're unconscious of it, that's your problem. You know what I'm saying? Your responsibility is to become conscious of what you're doing because you are, in fact, doing it. You see a commercial for somebody saying, oh, I'm depressed. I can't get out of my head. Join the club. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what the, you know? Seriously. Have you met anybody who can't get out of their head? Yes, everybody can't get out of their head. That's what we do. That is not what you do. People think I have to get complete. That means I have to accomplish all this psychological crap or spiritual crap or something, and I'll rise to the occasion and become complete. I'll finally fulfill myself and become. Boom. Eliminate all that crap of trying to fulfill yourself, like you talked about earlier. All that stuff of needs and stuff like that, and you will be complete because you already are complete. Just experience what's true. You and I exist as a social function. Your very existence right now, your experience of existence, let me say it that way, that is created by our social world. You're a sentient being because I say you are, and I'm a sentient being because you say I am. If you didn't make the distinction that there's a person over here talking to you, it wouldn't exist. It'd just be sights and sounds.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Lion's Heart. And today I have the honor of interviewing Peter Ralston. Now, Peter is actually a teacher of mine, and I've been to his workshops in Texas, worked with him one-on-one. I've read his books, some of them multiple times over. Overall, Peter is just a very interesting and very profound person. He's basically spent his whole life pursuing consciousness, studying the human mind, the psychology, and along with that, he's gotten direct insights into consciousness, the nature of reality, existential questions like what is existence, what is another. And on top of that, he's used these insights to become a master in martial arts and other domains. But in his 20s, he actually became a master in martial arts, and he was the first non-Asian to win the world championship in martial arts. So overall, just a very profound and interesting person. So I'm very excited for our interview today, and really looking forward to this honor of speaking with Peter Ralston. Peter, how's it going?
Going fine.
Awesome.
Just want to point out,
Yeah.
just in case any people out there dabble in the martial world, it was full contact. Most martial arts tournaments are not, like karate and the kung fu and stuff like that. They're just, pretend. You know what I'm saying? This is
Okay.
full contact
Okay. So this was
in
kind of
China.
this was kind of like MMA, like mixed martial arts kind of fighting.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It was before MMA, but yes.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Um, yeah, so I just wanted to actually just dive straight in. So I've got your newest book here, Ending Unnecessary Suffering. And I've read it and it's really profound. And really one of the key takeaways I got from it, and you can correct me on this, but really just one of the key takeaways that I got from it is that suffering, especially psychological suffering, is something that we are actually generating and something that we're doing. It's not something coming outside from us. It's not like the subconscious mind or something like that. It's really just something that we're doing, but we're not fully conscious of how, or we're not fully aware of how, or we're not sensitive to how. So it seems maybe like it's just happening, but you're claiming that we actually are fully doing this, similar to how you might, like I might be doing this action of holding the cup and putting it down. So I kind of had an example of that is like if you're driving on the road and someone, cuts you off on the road and you have the reaction of anger, you're saying that this is 100% has nothing to do with that person and it's actually something that you're fully and completely generating. Is that correct, or am I missing anything on that?
No, that's correct. Yes, and in a way, it is like picking up the cup. But we have you say that we're not fully conscious of most people aren't conscious of it at all. Most people live, the vast majority of people, pretty much everybody, lives as if circumstance determines their experience. In other words, like, what you see and feel and what you think, etc., it's like that's going to generate your experience, you see. It's like, am I happy? Am I sad? Am I in pain? Am I suffering? Am I in pleasure? Whatever. Yeah. And it's determined kind of like what comes to you. But we have a whole domain of suffering. The vast majority of our suffering is mental and emotional. You've probably noticed that. The people, your listeners probably noticed that they got, like you're lonely, you're depressed, you're upset, you're irritated, you're feel unworthy, you're scared, blah, blah, blah. Just go on and on. That whole domain that we live in as if it's true and real and it's not. It's, let me say that another way, as if it's inflicted upon us. And it's not inflicted upon us. Just like the guy who cut you off. I never understood that, by the way. I watched people, oh, he cut me off. So he's just going in front of you. I don't understand. Was this the deal? I don't understand why this is the deal. But anyway, okay, but people get upset by that for some reason. I don't know why. But in any case, you see, yes. So since I don't get upset by that, you can see I don't generate that. I don't see any reason to generate that one. I mean, I think, Jesus Christ, there's enough to worry about. Guy cut me off. Anyway, yeah. So you can see, well, if you don't generate it, it doesn't occur, right? See, yeah, but he cut me off. No, in your mind, you made a situation, something that occurred, I'm assuming somebody cutting you off, and this is somebody pulling in front of you, perhaps more suddenly than you want, And it's like, wait a minute, they pulled in front of me, they cut me off. All right, it's a big road. It's like, share. In any case, so you can see that there's something you have in your mind, and this is where people fall down. But in such a simple explanation that it's easy to cut through, you can see if you don't do that, it doesn't occur. The mere vision that a car moved this way doesn't bother you. See, you take affront because for some reason you think they're doing something to you. And for some reason, you think they're doing it on purpose. Like they say, you did something bad that hurt me, that bothered me. You're insulting me or something. I don't know. I don't know what this thinking is behind that one. But in any case, you see, it's like, if you don't think that suffering doesn't occur. You don't get angry. You don't get upset. You're not offended, et cetera, et cetera. See? And in every single case, and this is what's really hard for people to get, but in every single case, that's the case. That's true. You see, without what you're doing with your mind, that does not occur. And you brought up the unconscious mind or subconscious mind, and same thing. Like, I think, I'm just going to go on a limb here. I think that most people hold the unconscious mind or subconscious mind as something that they're effective, but they have no control. But you seem to hold that with everybody, their own mind. But, it's like, but you have no access. Oh, it's just trauma surfacing, or it's just this thing coming up. Oh, I got no control. And I would suggest, yes, you do have control. And so get off that bandwagon, It's like drop that assumption and that stance. It doesn't serve. It's not healthy. You're doing it. And because you're unconscious of it, that's your problem. You know what I'm saying? Your responsibility is to become conscious of what you're doing because you are in fact doing it. And if you just put it into a place like you say, well, it's my unconscious mind, then it has nothing to do with that, See, that's bigger than me, or that's deeper than me, or that's more Freudian than I am, or whatever, And he said, no, find out what you're doing there. And you say, okay, well, how do I do that? All right. Question. In any case, you see that the idea that there's an unconscious mind wouldn't occur for you unless somebody said that. And generally speaking, it goes back to Freud. You see, that idea is popularized by Freud that there's such an unconscious mind, or psychology, a subconscious like that. And basically, it's referring to there's stuff going on I don't really notice. It's not on the surface. I didn't have a thought that I can see. I'm not having a memory I can see right now, but I'm having something come up. I'm having something bother me or whatever, or drive me, and I don't know why. All
Mhm.
right, that's called ignorance. It's okay to be ignorant because, we're ignorant. All right. See, but our responsibility is to stop being ignorant, you know? And so even just like Freud, when he brought up the damn idea, and now we just use it as an excuse or a haven for all kinds of crap that I don't support.
Mhm. Mhm.
But, when he brought it up, how did he stumble upon it? The story about the train and everything, and he's passing by his train. He has his bad feelings and stuff, and he doesn't understand why. Why? So he looks into it. There you go. You see, he grasps, oh, something about his father when he was young and blah, and happened in the train. And he's making that connection without noticing it.
Mhm.
Good. See, so his whole point there was, well, get conscious. Okay. Don't stay unconscious. You see,
Mhm.
get conscious, and then boom, it goes away. You can separate that out. Oh, look, I can stop doing that thing with my father here with the damn train and free the train of this thing, whatever, this bad time you had with your father or something like that. But anyway, yeah. So you see what I'm saying here? See, now we in our culture and our cultures, uh, we we hold that this stuff that comes up, whatever you want to talk about, loneliness, depression, uh, uh, um, I'm dissatisfied with life. Ever been dissatisfied with life? Or you feel like, yeah, like you feel like something's missing. Just something's missing. It's not really right. It's not full enough. I'm not right enough. So maybe I'm broken. I'm not worthwhile. Blah, blah, all that stuff. You're creating all of it. You're creating all of it. And I'll say that again. You're creating all of it. Okay. It does not have to exist. As a matter of fact, it does not exist. It does not exist unless you create it, you generate it with your mind. See? And then people don't know how they do that, but read my book.
Cool. Yeah, so one thing that I've noticed, like as I've been working on this and as I've been kind of going into my own mind and going into the as you call it, the uncognized mind, like it's kind of like we're just not conscious of where it's coming from, possibly. I've noticed that there's almost like there's a feeling of like identification that happens where, at least for me, it feels like it's not as easy as for example, like putting this cup down, because there's a part of me that's like, oh, this is me, like this sadness or this anxiety or this reaction of anger on the traffic, like that's part of me versus like this I'm not identified. Like this is just a cup. I can just put it. So is there an element of like self-deception or like identification that's happening that maybe makes it more difficult to stop doing? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. See, now there's a couple things spring to mind about that. Like you're moving the cup, you're really good at it. You've done it probably for decades. Ever since you were very little, you started learning how to grab things, move them around. You see, so now you're a master at moving the cup. So it's pretty easy, but you haven't done that with your mind. So you're not a master at, moving your mind, in the same way. But also you're correct. With the cup, you want to drink something out of the cup. Now, if you're thwarted from that, you might get irritated, right? It's like the cup can't move, or I don't know, whatever. You drop it, break it, whatever. It's like, hey, I can't do it because you have some investment there. You see, there's something you want, yeah. Well, when it comes to you, of course, and your experience, and yeah, you identify with it, and you think it frames you, that you probably, so you how do I say? Like when you run into somebody and you say, well, that's an angry person. They're just like angry all the time, or that's really a shy guy. or there's a kind of a weird, introverted kind of guy or whatever, that guy is boisterous and over the top and whatever, see, and you characterize them and you say, and so they identify with something we can imagine. They identify with something that is consistent with that behavior. Like the shy guy is afraid, obviously, you see, and afraid socially, afraid of other people. The obnoxious guy, well, they got something going on there. They might actually be afraid of other people. We don't know, but this is their way of handling it. See, this is a way of controlling it, whatever, but it characterizes them. And so that we ourselves also are characterized. We have, things that we think of as ourselves, how you think of yourself. Do you think of yourself as powerful? Do you think of yourself as worthless? Do you think of yourself as, capable? Do you think of yourself as stupid or smart or what, all these things. And all of them, by the way, are social. They're all social. People don't understand the depth of the social reality that we share. It is the reality that we share. The very fact that I'm talking to you right now is the social reality. Mm-hmm. Say that you understand what I'm saying and that we have agreements, disagreements, views, etc., exist only in this conceptual social domain. It doesn't exist anywhere else. It doesn't exist in the wall behind you. And by the way, the wall behind you does not suffer. All right. See, that's a good thing to notice. You see, only you suffer. The wall doesn't. Even if you break it, it doesn't care. Okay. So I would say be like the wall. But yes, we do identify. And then so see, like when you're driven, the guy cut you off, whatever, or you're in an argument with a mate or something like that, right? And it's like, I've got to hold up my end. Something's going to get hurt here. See, now, most of the time, people aren't reflective enough to notice that they're afraid something's going to get hurt. Say, somehow I'm going to be damaged or hurt some way. Not physically, hopefully, see, but, emotionally or mentally, or I'm going to lose ground, like that being cut off. I'm going to lose ground. Alrighty, see, and I have to. So I have to argue this point. I have to stand my ground. I have to get angry or cry or whatever it is I got to do, right? See, I got to do this because I have to manipulate the other person so that I stay intact, so somehow in our interaction kind of deal. So it becomes important. And the problem is none of it is true. You don't have to. You don't have to. You are not that. I guess I should have led with that. So you're not that, and you don't have to protect anything. One way you can test that out is try it. See, next time you feel like, and then say, no, I got that. Wait, no, Ralston said, try this out. Okay, I'll try it out. It's just an experiment. I could always come back to it. I could always get angry again or whatever, right? Let me stop protecting this and see what happens. Let me stop doing my thing, and maybe here's a thought. I'll just put attention on the other person. See, because the other person is the other person. It's not your shit. See, it's a different matter. So I'll just put attention. I won't judge them. I won't go down any road because judging, and that's going to throw back at me again. See, I'll just see them for what they are, so to speak. Let them be that way, because I have to do something here. I got this experiment I'm doing. I got to do something here. And I'm going to stop this. I got to do something else, right? Because I'm a doer with the mind, right? So, okay, I'll do that. And then see what happens. I'll bet you two things. One, you don't die. Two, okay, three things. Two, you don't lose a damn thing. And three, you gain something. Now, that's not what you think when your automatic drives and agendas and emotional reactivity. See, that's not the way you hold it, but you will find it's the truth. So you'll actually see stuff you didn't see before. You'll be able to interact in ways you didn't interact before, etc. When you do drop that. So in this case, I'm just trying to make a case for you to experiment and notice that, oh, all those bad things don't come to pass.
Mm,
They're illusions. It's a social world. It's an ethereal world. It's a made up world. It's an invented world.
mm.
And so when you don't participate, you simply don't participate in the, that way, the way you were participating.
So I think like hearing that example, something comes to mind of like if you're out and like say you're out with your girlfriend or something and someone's insulting her, they're like, insulting you or something, or it seems like wouldn't you want to like that's almost a threat or like, there's something you should defend or like it seems strange to just like, oh, that's all right, that's fine, or I don't know. It seems like there should be some, even though it's conceptual, like there should be some kind of like defense happening. Yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, sure. Now, see, now you're talking about interactions. Now, if it's a physical threat, that's different. If it's just verbal and it's just verbal, you can always interact however you interact. You could ignore them, or you could say, I don't like what you're saying, you know, and say, I don't think that's true. You know, my woman is not a slut whore or whatever. It's like, no, I know from experience, and it's not true. So you're inaccurate. I just like you to correct it. Anyway, whatever. You can interact any way you want. Like sometimes, as you know, we just started with this kind of martial background, fighting background I have. I did a lot of it. See, so if I were in a bar, and I don't frequent bars, so it's just a hypothetical, okay? But if I were in a bar, I have been in situations when I was young in different places, right? Say, and somebody's getting rowdy and drunk, whatever, right? And they're trying to be bad, beastly. Say, there's two advantages I have. First of all, I'm not afraid of them, and most people are. That doesn't mean I'm not going to notice the social impropriety, It's like you're crossing lines here, you know. This is bad. You're threatening physical violence, whatever. You're being nasty for some reason, You had a bad day, I don't know, right? See, but I would just probably talk to them. And to tell you the truth, in my life, I've had situations like that happen early on. And I, most of the time, never got into a physical conflict. Because I would convince them it was not the right thing to do.
Mm.
And because I have, I guess you'd say, I can back it up and they get that, like in my look or whatever, say that maybe it's not a bad thing to do. I mean, maybe it's not a good thing to do, right? I could be in trouble here. Sometimes, it's like my friend Emmett. He was very good at it when I was very young, and we'd be in Chinatown or something like that. We ran into some punks, and they're getting, threatening, and uh, and I wanted to fight them. I was young and brash, and it's like, they insulted and stuff like that. It's like, okay, I want to fight them, right? I don't know if they knew who I was. It doesn't matter. But in any case, I want to fight. But Emmett, as with Emmett, he just steps forward, claps his hand, talks to them, and he treats everybody equally. It doesn't matter if you're a king or a bum, close foreign, it doesn't matter to him. You're a person, period. It doesn't, there's only two people in my life that I ever met like that, that's true. But in any case, and he would talk to them, and every single time, I'm not saying it was a lot of times, but anyway, every time he somehow created the reality that if they proceeded to physical violence, they would look stupid. That it was not the thing to do. See, and he made it so that somehow, without degrading them, putting them down in any way, it's just like, you kind of like have a choice here. I don't know how he did it. I didn't study how he did it, but he would somehow create that. It's like, oh, okay, then we look dumb if we fought. Okay, yeah, sure. So he could do that, And the other thing I would say is, Mullah Nasruddin, You ever heard of Mullah Nasruddin? No,
Mm-mm.
he's a Sufi, one of my favorites. But he tells stories, you know. He's dead long centuries ago, centuries ago. Okay. But he tells this story, and it's kind of in the ballpark of what you're talking about. And one of the things I'll use is he comes across this village, and there's this, you know, king cobra, massive king cobra, living in the jungle next to the village, you see. And people are terrified of this king cobra. And because, you know, he'll bite them and whatever. Yeah. And so he goes up to the king cobra and he says, hey, you know, you shouldn't hurt people. It's not cool. You know, he did the Emmett thing. And he said, you know, you shouldn't hurt people. And the snake said, oh, okay. All right, I won't hurt them. And then, you know, Mullah said, okay, good, good. So he goes off and he comes back a year later and he finds this snake all beat up and bandaged and, you know, starving and stuff. And he says, what happened to you? And he says, well, you told me I shouldn't hurt people. And when the villagers found out that I wasn't going to hurt them, they beat the crap out of me, you know? And he said, look, I told you not to hurt them. I didn't tell you not to scare
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's a good one. Um, so I think another thing that comes up for me, like when reading this and looking at my own experience, my own life, and even the titles ending unnecessary suffering, I think that there's a component that people feel into of this is necessary, like I have to have this reaction, or like say that, for example, if someone I love is sick and they're in really bad shape and they need to go to the hospital, like me generating fear is actually helping to get me to take action and move quickly and get them in the car. Or like walking by a cliff, like having fear walking by a cliff is actually helping me to stay away from falling off the side, or um, just making me more cautious and aware. Like if I didn't have the fear, maybe I wouldn't be as cautious, knowing that my life could end really shortly. So is there a component where it's ever like, are these reactions and are these emotions ever necessary? Or is it always like we just don't need to do this?
them. Yeah, it's always like we don't need to do this.
Hmm.
But see, let's suss this out a little bit, right? And you brought up my cliff thing, so I'll go there. But see, there's nothing in caring about somebody you don't find to be suffering, right? You know, I hope. You don't suffer because you care. So you care about this person and you know that they're in crisis, they're in trouble, and you want them to get better. Now, chances are you do that pretty much for anybody, even if you didn't care. You know what I'm saying? Right? The Good Samaritan thing, right? So, you know, it's just what we do with the people. If you're healthy of mind, you know, it's like, of course, you're going to help them. But the fear only hurts. It only gets in the way. It does not help. Say, you know already, see, because you wouldn't have the fear if you didn't know already that the best course of action is to get them to the hospital or whatever, emergency room, right? So do that.
Hmm.
Do that swiftly. The fear does not increase your speed. Okay. It gets in the way because you're afraid you're likely to bumble and trip or something, or, you know, forget your keys or, you know, whatever, you know what I'm saying? You're likely much more to do that or to be blinded by stuff. You see? You're so afraid when the guy cuts you off, you ram him. And that doesn't help. You know, just hurt your friend here. You know, like, anyway, um, so you see, it doesn't help. You have everything you need to have
Hmm.
the information. They're in trouble. You know, you already assessed that. You know, they're in trouble. They need to do this, blah, blah, blah. This is the best course of action. You know, say. So, like you talk about walking on a cliff. And like I say, you know, you don't need the fear. As a matter of fact, the fear does, it just gets in the way, the same way. Say, you walk on a cliff. What do you need not to step over the cliff? Because people think, well, if I don't have the fear, I'm just going to walk off the cliff. Are you stupid? See? Because you have the same information you do with the person that's in crisis.
Hmm.
You walk off the cliff, you'll die. Do you want to die? Good. There's a way to go. All right. You know how to do it. You don't have to be afraid though. I mean, you want to commit suicide, so you walk off the cliff. Just make sure it's a really tall one. Okay. And you say, okay, so don't walk off the cliff.
Hmm.
See, all you need to know is the distinction between if I do this, that happens, if I do this, that, etc. And then see, you don't walk off the cliff.
Hmm.
And you know that people who walk on cliffs like in the Andes all the time, they're not afraid
Hmm.
because they don't walk off the damn cliff. You know, in any case, you see what I'm saying? The fear doesn't help. As a matter of fact, in the world of fighting that I was in, and again, there's a range in that world. Most martial arts, like I said, are kind of fake and superficial and blah blah blah. But you see, there's still a social component when you're fighting, you're having a match, even in karate, it's just like that, and you feel bad when you lose. You know what I'm saying, or whatever, and so there could be fear there.
Hmm.
You see, or whatever it is, you don't want to feel like you're incapable, weak, whatever it is, what's coming up for you, or you dominate and you feel good, or whatever, you know, but those are all social components. Real fighting is no room for social components.
Hmm.
That's not the event. That's not what's taking place. And see, most people have a hard time getting that out of the way. Really, because that's ingrained in us. This is where we live every moment of the day, pretty much, you see. And but so in fighting, if you're good, you learn to turn that off. You enter a different domain that's much faster, much more sensitive, much more responsive than the social thing. If they got the social thing in there at all, like the fear, the anger, the irritation, everything that kind of shit, it gets in the way. It slows you down. It really does. I'm not joking. I'm saying it really does slow you down. See, it also gets in the way. It's a barrier that messes you up.
Hmm.
So you get that out of the way, you move much faster, more clean, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you just look at any, professional who does something that is so demanding. It doesn't have to be fighting, I mean, or even, like warfare or something like that. It could be, I don't know, top of the notch skiing. We're just doing this Olympic skiing thing, right? Or whatever it is, right? So, and they would have to tell you if they're top notch, yeah, you have to get your mind out of the way. You got to get all those emotions out of the way. I mean, how can you do some of that stuff that they do, right?
Hmm.
Flying around in the air and shit like that, if they were like nervous or afraid or second guessing themselves, you know what I'm saying? Because they can crash, right? See, but they cannot focus on that. They've got to be in the moment exactly what they're. Anyway, I'm
Hmm.
assuming, okay, I'm not them, but I'm just assuming. See, but any domain like that, they'll tell you that. See, but most people don't have access to those kinds of demands, those kinds of domains. And so they don't learn that lesson.
Hmm.
But it's a good lesson to learn. But I think you can learn it anywhere. You don't have to put your life in danger, to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully not. Um, yeah, no, it's so interesting because one thing I love about your teachings and it's just like it's so wildly like simple, but it's so profound because it's like it's like, yeah, of course, like stop the fear and you can still walk by the cliff and know not to fall and like that's gonna kill me. So and the fear is just getting in the way, but it's so yeah, so because I don't think most people go there. Most people don't think that. It's just like I have to have fear in this situation. Like it's so automatic and all encompassing. Um, but it's just interesting because there's so much, people put so much energy and effort and religions and marketing and advertising into ending suffering. And you're saying, just stop doing it. You're creating it, become sensitive to how and stop doing it. So I find that really inspiring and cool. Um, and actually, one thing that I wanted to mention was it seems like some of this kind of flies in the face of what we're told about psychology and like the hierarchy of needs and basically that we have all these needs that we need to get fulfilled to be happy, like, respect in the workplace and, the spouse and the house. And then we're told in psychology, we have to fix all our traumas. We have to do our inner child healing. We have to do shadow work. And basically, you're saying, like, scrap all that shit. Just stop doing it. Stop generating suffering. You're already whole. Is that correct? Or how do
Yeah.
you feel about those kind of things?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, yes. Remember, see, all those methods of as if ending your suffering or trying to cure your suffering, they're not about stopping your suffering at all. They're about managing your suffering. See, like you see a commercial for somebody saying, oh, I'm depressed. I can't get out of my head. Join the club. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what the fuck? You know? Seriously. Have you met anybody who can't get out of their head? Yes, everybody can't get out of their head. That's what we do. Anyway,
Right.
we use that as an excuse. You see, it's like, I'm in my head, therefore I'm depressed. Well, stop thinking what you're thinking. Stop being depressed.
Hmm.
Stop whining about it.
Hmm.
Grow up, and see, like the more, as you can see, because again, I have different realities, but let me see if I can do a couple things. One, also, I should acknowledge I'm old school, right? I come from a generation very, very long time ago, 1949, for Christ's sake. I grew up in the 50s, etc. Just after World War II, my father was no, etc. Blah, 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 right? See, depression. See, they were in the depression. See, so I got a lot of values and relations to things that, I was taught work in those days, see? And some of it is like, like the contrast, like, some of those things you said, um, in in the old days, and there's some value in it. See, in the old days, you were taught to be a man, and that meant something. It was a particular thing meant, it's like don't whine, don't complain, don't try to justify an excuse, be responsible, own what you're doing,
Hmm.
and do it without complaint, kind of thing, right? Without whining. And that's like the whole, what's it called, great generation. See, and it's amazing because like I watched my father, I watched the other people, etc. Holy cow. And they didn't bitch and moan about it. You know, they undertook sometimes great dangers and lots of discomfort and still did it,
Hmm.
etc. Anyway, so I'm just saying, see a different value system. See, whereas now it would be whiny, whiny, whiny. Like, oh no, I can't do that. It's like that doesn't serve. You see, we're trying to get happy the wrong way.
Hmm.
It's like one of these ancient Greek guys said, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Um, happiness doesn't lie in attaining your desires. It lies in stopping your desires. And people don't look there. They're constantly trying to attain, trying to cure. So it's like the drugs. Take a drug and you'll feel better. Take a drug and you'll feel better. Ah, Jesus, why not teach these people that they don't have to be depressed?
Hmm.
Well, because there's a huge industry that likes them being depressed.
Hmm.
And they'll give them drugs to fuck up their brain enough so, okay, I'm not depressed anymore. But that's why people take heroin
Hmm.
and opium. I suspect you're not depressed on heroin. You know what I'm saying? You know, okay, but that's a temporary cure. And in that case, a bad one. You know, see, so it's not curing anything. It's just distracting you.
Hmm.
It's creating, etc. See, so okay, all right. So what if I say, okay, let's do this more healthy. Yeah, fuck the drugs. We don't like the drugs. All right. So sit down by the stream. Yeah, yeah. Okay. And you sit there, you meditate, right? Nice little babbling brook there. Yeah. Calm your mind. Be in the present moment. Relax. You know, meditate something, yeah? And you'll feel better. You will feel better. It's amazing. See, but now you're dependent on goddamn streams, okay, or meditating. You see, and again, it's only temporary, isn't it?
Hmm.
Because you get up and then the bus is late. By the time you get home from the stream, whatever, you're irritated as fuck, and in a bad way. Okay. See, that's why I wrote like in the Reflections of Being, being able to change your state on the subway. Okay? People think, well, I have to be in the perfect environment in order to meditate. No, you don't. You dumb fucks. See, you're missing the whole point. I don't mind a perfect environment. I love the little Zen monastery. It's so clean, so pretty, right? You know, you go to Bali. Everyone wants to go to Bali nowadays, whatever, right? And you get a nice little place, and you're like, okay, good, that's nice. And you enjoy it. You know, you can do that on vacation. See, and you think, well, now I can meditate better. No, you can't. See, there will be as many distractions there as anywhere else. See, but you know, like you're in a Zen monastery, maybe helps you focus because you know that's the purpose for being there. Good, good. See, but how about if you meditate, you contemplate, you investigate while the kids are crying at your knee and the traffic is blaring outside and you know, husband's yelling at you in the other room to get dinner or whatever, you know, say, yeah, can I change my state now? That would be a good time to be able to do that, right? You would think. See, because that's the kind of shit you don't like. Okay, right? See, and then you go, boom, oh, this is bad. Damn the babbling brook. Nothing against babbling brooks. I have a few, I love them. Okay, but it's like that's nothing against that. All right. I'm just saying, you see, you don't depend on these things. You don't make your experience circumstantially derived. In other words, derived from circumstance, which is what we do. And all those things you mentioned, and all the cures you mentioned, aren't really cures. Now, could you have some benefit? You do the psychological thing, you know, heal past traumas and childhood crap and all this stuff like that. Yeah, sure. How many people? Sure. And sometimes you have some breakthroughs, right? And maybe some progress. Oh, progress. Good, good, good for you. Why? Because you became conscious of something. But that's the key. The psychology, fuck it. Okay? That's not the key. Going through all these. And the other part is, you know, if you've done that, anybody who's done through psychotherapy and whatever, psychoanalysis and engaged in something like that, and, you know, maybe it's good for you and you get some benefit from it, I hope. See, but in the end, yeah, it still didn't do the trick, did it? See, in the end, it's like, well, man, wait a minute, I still got shit going on. Life, damn it. You know, I thought I'd be just in bliss by now. I mean, I cured 5 traumas and, you know, rebirthed myself and had some primal pain and still look, life keeps going on, you know, goddamn, you know. See, because that's not what it's for, really. I mean, you know, I mean, maybe if you have some serious problems, you could use some help, you know, perhaps, yeah. And people talk about being clinically depressed, and I'm really skeptical. Okay, now, but if you do have some physiological problem with your brain, and I acknowledge there's physiological problems we have with anything, you know what I'm saying? You know, you can break a finger, you can have a heart attack, etc. Right? You know, you can have physiological problems. Your hormones go nuts, whatever, like that. See, so maybe some intervention there helps. You know, like, oh, wait, you're producing too much of this or that, like that. So we balance that, and you feel better. Okay, you know, and nothing against that. You know, my first career was medicine, so it's like, okay. I just thought it was too limited. Okay, you know, and in any case, but let's put that aside. So, you know, I'm just saying, see, all those remedies, and then the spiritual practice is the same thing. Now, hopefully, in the spiritual practice, you have this sort of life view that, okay, I could meditate, contemplate, whatever, and get something out of it, you know, say, and then, but do you, you know? So many people, most of the time not, you know what I'm saying? I mean, you get something out of it right away, otherwise you wouldn't do it, right? See? And it seems like it's hopeful, see? But you can do a spiritual practice for 20 years and you pretty much the same schluck on the end of the 20 years as you were to begin, except now you've got the robes and you know how to talk, you know, whatever. And you got some nice beliefs, you know. So you sound good. See, and maybe it has some influence on you. It's a beneficial influence. See, but it doesn't really cure anything because it's not the root of the matter. And people don't look into the root of the matter, which is themselves. We always think the root of the matter is something else, you know? And then when we turn our attention to ourselves, what do people say? Well, I am lacking. I am worthless. I can't do it. I'm incapable. Ugh. Okay. Again, you're doing it. You're still the root of the matter. You're just too stupid to know it. You know what I'm saying? You're just not acknowledging that. See, well, but I am. I have proof that because over my lifetime I've seen myself fail at this or being capable of that, and I have fear of the other thing. All right, okay, stop that. One of the things, like I said, is talking about the old school. Again, you see, you're not in this case owning it like the old school. Like I said, Dwight D. Eisenhower. You probably heard of him. He ran the campaign in Europe, World War II, and then he became president, right? Now, I grew up, Eisenhower was the president. And as a kid, I thought he was always the president. It's like, he's like, going to always be the president. That's just how it goes, right? And kind of startled when, oh, no, wait, we got a new one? Oh. Anyway, but so he's the president. And I would watch him talk and stuff like that and how he dealt with things. And he was always calm and cool, never got emotional reactive. He was seemed to be a relatively gentle man, you know. And then I learned much, much later, I mean, like closer to recently than back then, right? See, that he actually, as a young man, was very angry and irritated. He's angry. And he assessed through looking into it, being angry, and realized anger is not the way to go. This is not going to be the most effective way to live my life, etc. And he changed. He destroyed the being angry thing. Like whatever his mind was doing, being angry, right? Say, and he did that. And he did it he didn't have psychology. He didn't have all the kind of foo-foo stuff we got today, right? That would tell him, how to cure this anger and fail to do so, because they'll mostly just how to manage it. Well, count to 10, and then he's like, well, no, he just by will stopped being an angry person and turned himself, at least apparently, as far as I could see, into a relatively gentle and calm person that could win wars.
Wow.
We kind of missed that part.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. So I want to move on from suffering, and
don't we all?
And go into the social domain. So just like the social, the ego, survival. I know you talk about these topics a lot. I've been to your center in Texas where we worked in the TEL workshop, where we worked a lot on language, social, the self that's surviving conceptually. So I've recalled you say like the social domain is something that's invented. It's an invention. Can you just touch on what that means and what really, how deep the social domain goes and how much of it is made up?
Yeah. Yes. People have a really hard time. Probably you're also talking about the TSW, by the way. If you're talking about the language,
Yes.
the transforming experience, the TEO is like, experience of life. But anyway,
Right.
either one's fine.
Correct.
They very hard for people to get. But let me tell you how deep it goes. You and I exist as a social function. Your very existence right now, your experience of existence, let me say it that way. I'm not talking about, the fact you have a body, that there is a body and that you are the body. We're gonna set that aside. That's not what you primarily identify with, is it? I primarily identify with someone who has all this reactions and suffers, right? This person, this one inside, like you said, ego, self, whatever, this inner mind, this inner self, etc. That one, this conscious entity that you are. Okay, I'm saying that is created by our social world. People can't get that. They really can't. They think, well, no, I'm an individual, independent of society. No, you're not. The fact that you're an individual is given to you by society. In other words, that whole thought and that whole stance of being an individual is given to you by society. You didn't make that up. You adopted it, right? But you didn't make it up. Anyway, it's like you didn't make up the language.
Mm.
Okay? And the fact that we're talking, like you said in the workshop, the fact that we're talking right now is shared. And it has to be shared. And you see how I like the language part because you see we're using it right now. See, so we can refer to something that's occurring in this moment. See, and the fact that you have to understand, and if you don't, let's just set that aside. Okay, you understand because you're a smart person that dodged a bullet there. Anyway, oh, erased my hand because I had my hand up there. That's cute. That's cute. Okay, so you could. Oh, I say I got to lower the hand. Okay. All right. Anyway, I got careful raising my hand. I guess. I don't know what's going to happen here. So we're talking about your existence now. We're going back to language. The fact that I'm talking to and you understand what I'm saying. And so creating a whole world out of what I'm saying, like I'm answering your questions. I understand what you're saying, right? And together we're conversing about a world that we share. If we didn't share it, we couldn't converse about it. And if we didn't share this language, we couldn't converse about it. It would be impossible.
Mm-hmm.
You see? And you didn't create that. I didn't create that. And we created that. Which is to say, you and I created that, but we didn't invent it. You see? We had to create it in our experience, learn it, is what we usually say, you know. And it's actually more than learning it, because it's not. Yeah. We have to create the context in which language can exist. And that has to be that you are a sentient being and I am a sentient being. And people overlook that completely. Where you say, well, this is just true. No, it's not. You're a sentient being because I say you are, and I'm a sentient being because you say I am. If you didn't make the distinction that there's a person over here talking to you, it wouldn't exist. It'd just be sights and sounds. Like for an infant,
Wow.
you see, they don't make that distinction, and that's why they don't talk to you for a while. Okay, until they create language, etc., and create sentience. You see, so in any case, that whole business is social. That is creating the social domain. People don't understand how far back it goes. That's why I do the TSW. See, it's like how far back it goes. It goes all the way back to your sense of existence, your sense of who you are, your sense of being, which, you know, your sense of having a mind, being willful, etc. See, that's all created by a shared reality by humanity, a shared reality by our culture or whatever culture you adopt, a shared reality by the social world that you participate within. See, if it's not shared, you can't do it, because you can see the social reality, culture, and humanity is all made up of agreements, you see, and assumptions and beliefs. You know, most of those agreements and assumptions fall into the domain of something invented. See, like, let's just grab something like democracy. Do we agree? You and I probably agree about democracy. Oh yeah, good thing, right? Democracy. That's an invention. Democracy doesn't exist in the universe. Go into outer space, find democracy. Hey, where's democracy? Where's democracy? You know, when the meteor comes and bumps in, you say, hey, you know, respect my space here. Whatever. You know, no, there's nothing like that. You see, it doesn't exist except we invent it. Say, you know, or don't. You know, we invent other things. We invent fascism. You know, we invent dictatorships. We invent all kinds of shit, right? But we have to share that for it to become a true, before it become a reality. See? So not all cultures, for example, share in that reality. They usually hear or tell. You know, you and I have heard of fascism, you know, and we see, you know, World War II movies and shit like that. Oh, those are bad guys. Okay, whatever. You know? See, we heard of dictators. We say, oh, that's not good. you know. Like I said, we hear of democracy, we hear of communism, etc. You know, we hear of these things and perhaps learn something about them, right? But we don't live in them, we don't agree with them, but we know of them because why? They're shared. They're shared in our reality. But anyway, okay, like let's move on. You know, you and I are polite to each other. You see, what? That's a social thing. We learn to be polite. You have to teach kids how to be polite, right? Share, share. No, no, don't hit them in the head with it. Share, you know, whatever. See, please, thank you. You know, like, see, and those are important things in our social interactions that, you know, create a congenial, you know, interaction. See, so things go more smoothly. You know, and I feel respect, you feel respect, that kind of shit, right? Now, of course, you know, we can go too far with stuff like that, right? See, so we also invent things like tough love, see? And so you go, oh, I'm sorry, it might hurt your feelings, but it's healthy for you. You should know, blah, blah, blah. So this is tough love, you know, whatever, see? So now we have a new thing, see? So we can get around this, I gotta always be nice. Because I gotta always be nice and be a nice guy is such limitations.
Mm.
There are too many things that are healthy and powerful we can't do when we are restricted to that.
Mm.
Like, for example, you know, I had to teach Brendan, right? Stop being a nice guy. It's not the first facilitator I've had that have had to teach that because a lot of the people that come to me are nice guys. Okay. You know, they're nice people, but they've got this program that they have to be a nice guy and they have to be seen as a nice guy. I say, no, you can't facilitate that way.
Mm.
If you're worried about being seen as a nice guy, you will not do a good job. Your
Mm.
job is not to be a nice guy because your job is to help them. And if you're trying to be a nice guy, that's you.
Mm.
And you're focused on the wrong place. And if you have to kick their ass, you've got to kick their ass. And if they don't like it, that's not your problem. It's their problem, actually. See? And you have to do the job. You see what I'm saying? You know, a
Mm.
little like the fighting thing. You know, you can't, no, it'll be a, I'm sorry, nice guy. Oh, did I hurt you? No, you can't do that. See, it's like you got to do a job, and the compassion for the job is greater than your, let's say, self-interest, you know, of being a nice guy. See, so you have to throw that out,
Mm.
and then you can do the job. For example, you see now people don't think of that. See, and sometimes, you know, some gurus or whatever, really nice guys, right? You know, see, and they're nice guys. And he's like that. Okay, so that must be a key. Okay, good. I'm glad they're nice guys, and hopefully they can do a job. I have no idea. You know, maybe they do a job that's worthwhile. I don't know. See, but like let's take the archetype of Jesus, right? Say, now Jesus has a reputation for being a really nice guy. Okay, love thy neighbor. See, but he also kicks some ass and turned some tables over. So he wasn't always a nice guy. In other words, he wasn't focused on me being a nice guy. He was focused on principles that are beyond himself, which included, you know, love thy neighbor, you know, being compassionate,
Mm.
treat people well, whatever, that kind of shit, you know. You see the difference though.
Mhm.
See? So I bet I'm gonna just I'll just make something up here, right? Given, I'm just making stuff up. I'm just, you know, this is from all legend. This is all legend, right? Built on legend. You know, we don't know what of it is true or not. But, you know, given that he had the cojones, okay, to go get killed on a cross when he didn't have to, because, you know, he could have gotten out of that several ways. If you follow the story, even Pontius Pilate tried to get him out of it. You know what I'm saying? So in any case, but if he had whatever it takes to be able to do something like that, and then, you know, again, he didn't like it. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, again, according to legend, like, I'm sure it sucks. Okay, big time. But in any case, we could imagine that he could look you in the face unflinchingly. You follow me? And that if he loved you, it might scare you to death because it's more love than you feel you could handle coming from a person. See? Now that is a form of kicking ass. Okay. and he might have a great reputation, but I bet more than one person that met him went, oh, this is a little much there, guy. I don't know. Again,
Wow, so much there. Yeah, so I wanted to kind of yeah, just investigate the social a little bit of and I had this insight while I was in Texas working at the during the workshop. But basically, it was just this feeling of, just how invented the social domain is. And I had an image in my mind of like a bar, like being an observer of a bar. And there's all these people in there and they're talking and there's all these dynamics happening and there's all this whole world happening, like who's kissing who and who's here with who and who's on the hierarchy and all these things. And in this kind of like mental visualization I was doing, it was like this is all like if you were a bird or an ant, it's just murmuring noises and bodies standing around. But like inside the minds of these people, there's this whole world, this whole complex world that's happening, relationships and dynamics and all these things. Um, so I found that really cool, like in contemplating the social domain. And I guess I'm just kind of curious about like the ego, like this separate conceptual self that we create. Um, because I believe it's in the Book of Not Knowing where you discuss like kittens play when they're young to learn how to hunt, and then humans do the same thing, but like to learn how to be social, maybe. So it seems like we develop these conceptual selves, we invent these selves, and then when we're older, I mean, it's pretty wild because we're so attached to them. We're so like we're taking them so seriously. We don't know they're invented. We don't know they're made up for the most part. Why do you think it happens to where we don't know how to stop playing? Like we've taken these, like we go to bed at night, or even if we go off into the mountains, away from society, away from people, we're still a person. We're still doing the person thing. Um, why do you think that's such a strong like pull there, like such a strong attachment?
because you are that.
Hmm.
You see, when you say, we invent this uh, social self or whatever, right? It sounds like it makes us seem like that there's us, just the way you actually think of yourself, see, and then we invent something else. Okay? And like people talk about ego, and Freud talked about ego as you, basically, self, see, but we don't talk about it that way in our society much anymore at all, do we? Ego is something we have. It's a part of us, and a lot of times it's got a bad rap, right? You see, oh, you're egotistical. You have too much ego, you see, and that's usually when we use that word,
Hmm.
see, but really it just means you. It's Latin for you. No, I anyway, so you see the the experience that we have is that. That's why it's so important to us
Hmm.
because we come to exist. We're born, right? And there one um, principle that's inherent in our being born is life, and the basic principle of life is survival, is to persist,
Hmm.
to live, to stay alive. That comes with the package, one way or another. When it doesn't come with the package, that person dies. They do. And sometimes that happens, right? But in any case, that comes with the package, right? So everything we experience being falls into that same principle, that
Hmm.
same dictum, dictate. Like, so if you experience being a self, even if you experience being a self with an ego and a mind, whatever, or you experience being the mind, experience being the ego, whatever. See, it doesn't matter. That must survive. How? Eh, you figure out. You problem solving. That's where you got a brain. Say, you work, you solve problems, you interact with the environment, you reinforce this, you learn, you do all this stuff using the tools you have. And over time, say as an adult, you've built up a lot of stuff. a lot of tools. And the majority of them are now second nature, just like picking up the cup. You know how to do this now. You know how to be that. If you remember back when you were a really, really, really young child, if you can remember that, if you can go back to maybe two or so, if possible, a lot of people can't. Things are a bit different. You thought of yourself a bit different. Some way, same, because your perceptive capacity by then is already created. Language is already created. Social is already created. Identity is already created. You see, location is already created. All that's already created. So you're a full person by the time you're two.
Hmm.
You're a complete person by the time you're two. When you're one, not as much. See? When you're an infant, you can see, not as much. They can't talk, they can't walk, they can't, etc. Okay. See, so you're doing by two. But still, there's still other stuff you had to learn. And I mean, if you remember back in high school, there's probably stuff that you went through in high school. You don't now go through those kinds of things. High school is for a lot of people a nightmare. Like the whole social world you're trying to master in a different way. All these nuances and who's who and hierarchy and who am I and how do I fit in? And now it becomes really important. I mean, you're doing some of that in the other elementary school, whatever like that, right? You're doing some of that, but not the same way. There's a lot more room for playing around and whatever, not knowing, not having your shit together, whatever, the same way. But high school, see, now you're turning it into an adult, see, and you've got to now know, and you've got to get that. And so there's a lot of angst around that, right? But still, you might remember some time in high school or some, I don't know, circumstance where you were scared to death, dancing or something like that, or going to this like, and now no problem. It's like, so you don't take it so seriously. It's like, oh, I see. It's different. So you've shifted something, something, the way you think about yourself, and probably mostly the way you think about the world, circumstance, so you don't see it the same way. But in any case, yeah, but the drive is always the same, no matter what the content is. See, no matter what, take any person you can bring to mind, whatever, like a same thing. They are being that. And that's their job, to be that. Do they have to be that? No. Do they have to be that way? No. But nobody knows that. See? Are they actually that? No. But again, nobody knows that because that's what they are being. So I'm saying that's what they're living as and protecting and maintaining and surviving. And so all this reactivity is part of that. All this suffering is part of that. All this seeking pleasure and desire is part of that. All this trying to get healed is part of that. All this trying to become whole and complete is part of that. See? It's just some of those things you're successful at, the suffering, the becoming whole and complete, not so much.
Wow, so it's really like it's the word survival for you covers a very broad range of
Huge.
it's huge. It's not just I need to eat and I need to sleep and I need to shit. It's like
No, that's
survival
huge.
is like my whole being is survival basically.
Yes, yes,
Wow.
yes. And as a matter of fact, if you want to push the envelope a little bit, which I always find useful, your whole perceptive world is survival.
Wow.
Everything you're perceiving right now is part of that same world. Everything is feeding into that world. And everything you perceive, in relation to you, see, and our agreements, etc., you see, instantly. Even the wall, the computer, the language, everything. It's all fed into that. That's how you know it, and you know its place, you see? This is significant, that's not significant, this is pretty, that's not pretty, whatever, good, bad, negative, positive, and instantly, you're very, very good at it. Light speeds, we do that. The whole perceptive field, but I probably go too far.
Yeah, I grapple with that one a little bit because it's like I really grapple with like what you could call objective reality is like this is a cup, it's like it seems so like solid and consistent. And to think that it's like somehow I'm doing that or that that's not what it is, it just seems so obvious. But I think that's something that I really still kind of struggle with in my contemplations is like, getting past just like objective reality, and
Yeah, yeah, but see, dig it. First of all, uh, let's leave objective reality alone for the moment because it's way, way beyond the discussion.
mm,
Um, so we'll just leave it alone. But you're not experiencing objective reality. You're experiencing a subjective reality. For example, just right there, that it's a cup. To who?
mm,
Not to itself. You see? It only, but for you, it lives as a cup. It
mm,
doesn't live as a cup for itself. It doesn't care. It's not alive, etc.
mhm,
You know what I'm saying? The color of your walls, you like, you don't like, you see? That's you,
mhm,
right? The color doesn't care, and so on. Every single thing.
mm,
Oh, this is insignificant. If it's insignificant, it fades from your perceptive view, from your perception.
mm,
Feeling wise, sound wise, sight wise, whatever it is.
mm,
Everything that's deemed as insignificant fades away. You can prove this to yourself by studying it and watching it. You see, there are things you're not perceiving right now that are easily in your field of vision that you don't recognize,
mm,
that you're not experiencing, you're not aware of.
mm,
Okay? Anyway, because they're insignificant. You don't care. See? And those will fade away. If they're insignificant but have a tiny bit of significance, then you recognize them, but you put them on like a don't care about it.
right.
Who cares about that thing, right? And then if they're significant, you have attention on it. So you and I talking now is significant. So you have
Mhm,
attention on it, see?
mhm,
And you're listening to it. But I don't know, this background thing is kind of, you probably don't really care about it too much.
yeah,
See, but oh yeah, it gives a certain Japanese feel to it. And it's the
right.
background, whatever they got, right? See, so all of that feeds into your experience. You see,
Mm,
it
mhm.
you don't care about at all. And you've
Wow.
done the EMB, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. See, so you remember, for itself. See,
right.
and so you know that. See, even the objects, etc., you can experience for itself, and that takes a huge domain of what we normally call perception away from it.
Right.
You're still perceiving.
Mhm,
So you're still seeing light, register, etc.,
mhm,
on a distinction. See, but that's all.
mm,
That's all. See, so if we just leave it at that, because to go further, well, I'll just say this: get my new book, which will be out in 3 weeks.
wow.
Okay,
Awesome.
take my new book, and then you can work on some of this shit, and it'll be incredibly hard.
Mm,
Okay, and you're likely to fail.
mm.
All right. I'm not trying to be anti-cheerleader here. I'm just telling you the truth. It's not easy. It's not easy. Okay. It takes incredible amount of consciousness
Mm,
to do the new book. Not all of it. I always throw in some for, everybody. Okay. I always throw some things that everybody can understand to
mm,
some degree. All right. But then I'm going to throw in stuff nobody can understand. All right. So be prepared. But in any case, your objective reality thing, that's handled in there.
mm.
But be prepared that it's not easy. I mean, you'll read it, it's in English, but to experience it is harder. The conscious breakthrough it takes is harder.
Mm,
But anyway, yeah. So you can see in that sense, though, about your interpretations
mm.
of your perceptive field is all you,
Okay.
and that's all survival. Why do you
Mm,
need why do you need interpretation at all? Survival. See, like, why do you need to know if I walk off the cliff, I'm going to die? Survival.
mm,
Well, you don't need to know that. You know
mhm.
what I'm saying? And, you know, um, a piece of dust flying in the air doesn't know that and doesn't care. Okay. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Yeah, this fine. But anyway, see, you need to know that for survival, itself, right? Take care of yourself. And everything else, all the way in through the social domain, which is humongous. The world that we've created here is staggering, staggering. I mean, really is. I studied it, and I'm not easily staggered. Okay, I spent decades and decades and decades doing this, right? And I'm telling you, it's staggering.
Mm.
But read my new book; you'll be staggered. In any case, so you can see that that part, your interpretation, and then consider, why do you need perception at all?
Survival, right?
Yes.
Mm.
You see, if it wasn't for survival, even just in the biological sense, you wouldn't need perception, right?
Mm.
So you see how it all feeds into the same effort, the same event.
Hmm.
We're living this event. You see,
Mm.
we're living this thing, and it's much deeper than people think.
Yeah, that is very staggering that it comes all. I mean, I think, as I said, I think most people just think it's like survival is like food and shelter, but it's the way that you define it is like it's just basically all encompassing. Like reality is suffering, is survival.
Survival.
Yeah, so
Life.
life, right?
Life is, yeah.
Wow. One last thing I wanted to touch on this this topic is language. So we definitely dove a lot into language in the TSW workshop. Um, but basically, like if I look at the word apple and like we imagine we could have the word apple on the screen, like it seems like what is significant and profound about our abilities to interpret language is that these words, it's just these symbols, these shapes, and we can turn them into something that it's not and get the concept out of it that has nothing to do with those letters. And it seems like there's something that's happening there that we have some ability as humans, as with like with our mind, with our conceptual mind, to take the letters and the symbols that are there and then extract from that some fruit, some green fruit that has nothing, the two have nothing to do with each other. They don't look alike, they don't, and so I'm kind of curious what's the significance there? Like what does that imply? Um, our ability to do that.
Yeah. Also make mine red. You can see how it's kind of subjective. See, talk about apples, I think red, you see.
Right, right. True.
So that again, that's a function of language, and the short version, it's a conceptual capacity. Remember, we were talking about the kittens
Mhm.
playing, and then we play in conceptual worlds. You said social, but first it's conceptual. Say conceptual social, we'll work into that. But you see, we'll invent. You remember as a kid inventing worlds. Now,
Mhm.
unfortunately, kids, they get the worlds invented for them on a screen.
Yeah.
I don't think that's useful. But
Mm.
when I was young, we had to create forts out of boxes or whatever, and chairs and blankets or whatever it is. And then we'd have pirates and we'd do things and whatever. And so I invented worlds, you see, that we lived in. And we found that when we lived in these worlds, because you and your friends would agree upon the world. If you didn't, you couldn't play the game. So you agreed upon the world, and you got good at creating a little world you could play in and act out adventures
Mm.
in a safe way, because you're not actually a pirate and that stick is not really a sword, you see, and whatever, but you can play with your friends and do stuff. And you didn't realize you realized it, see, but you got, how am I going to say this, anyway, you invented that you could invent shit. Okay, you saw that if you could agree on something, it could be a reality you could interact with and in. And then over time, that turned into a really pretty fixed one. See, of inventions that you shared with the humanity, and
Mm.
culture. So it became like, this is the way it is.
Mm.
Now, even in there, and then there's lots of stuff that we agree on that, for example, distance, the walls there, your cup, these things are simple. And we all agree on those for the most part. There may be still a few, I don't know, Aboriginal tribes deep somewhere that don't, I don't know. But for the most part, we've cured the planet of that and taken over. So in any case, so we agree on these basic human things. Like you and I travel, and when we travel, we go to a different culture. First thing is we know it's a different culture, and we give some space that the social values will be a little different. and the customs will be different, right? So we give space for that, and hopefully we know a little bit about what that is, the difference is. But humanly, no. Say human, like somebody's talking to you, don't speak your language. They talk and gesture and stuff like that, and you kind of get an idea what they're talking about. Pointing and doing and zooming like that, doing different kinds of forms of language, etc. So there's this world of agreements without which it would just be a crazy person waving their hands around, making screeching noises or whatever, you see. And so we have this world. Remind me, what are we talking about?
Just language and how, yeah, I guess just like the
Right.
mechanisms of language. Yeah.
Right, language. So I'm going to say something simple, and yeah, people have to work on this. But you see, we make a distinction. We make any distinction. Now, a distinction to me is anything, period. Full stop. The wall's a distinction. You're a distinction. Your cup is a distinction. The words I'm saying are distinctions. Sound is a distinction. Light is a distinction. The universe is a distinction. Society is a distinction. Body is a distinction, etc. Right? Your eyeball is a distinction, etc. etc. So anything. Have I covered enough? Fast is a distinction. No matter what it is. Okay, distinction. Now, we make distinctions. We're invited to make distinctions. And in those distinctions, we make a distinction. And a lot of times that distinction falls into the domain of an invention or an agreement, you see, that we can now share. Because the moment you and I make a distinction that we share, see, we call that something of reality that we can perceive together, or talk about or think about or whatever. Yeah. So when we make a distinction in order to create, because people are making distinctions long before language. And language existed long before mind, by the way. Something to think about. But in any case, we make when we can represent any distinction with some form that it is not, and have an agreement about that, you see, that's language. So right now I'm making sound. So the word sound. When this sound comes out, say you grasp its, I'm referring to a distinction called noise, sound, see, or table. Again, see, the sound table, see, you immediately recognize table as, that thing in front of you or whatever, this thing here, it's like concept of table. But the sound is not the table. The word apple on the screen is not an apple. Again, as you can see, green, red. You see? See, it's not an apple. As a matter of fact, it has nothing to do with apples. See? It's a squiggly thing that you had to learn. And it took years to learn that, You forget because it was long ago, and see. But it was harder for you to learn to read and write than it was for you to speak. You learned how to speak first. See? And then somebody taught you how to read and write, right? So you learn how to make sounds, mean this distinction, this distinction, this distinction, right? See, so you can see that apple, again, like in another language, in French, it's like pomme, right? Yeah, I only know pomme de terre, it's like the apple of the earth, potatoes. For French fries, pomme de terre. Anyway, see, and so if we don't speak French, somebody says pomme, and you go, like a palm tree? Palm? No. Pomme. Anyway, and you don't, or in Japanese or Chinese, see, you don't know what they're talking about, because you don't share that sound or that symbol. See, like if you read, kanji, they say, I don't know what that is, because you don't know what it's referring to. See? So you don't have that distinction wed with that form, because it has nothing to do with the form. You have to learn that. Right? And when we learn that, we learn massive amounts. And if you can remember, or better yet, you look at kids, you see an infant, and then you see them starting to learn language, and you can see they understand language faster than they can speak it. Okay, because you can say to them something and it makes a difference, and then and they can't, but they'll get some words out, and then they start to build a language. You see, and then they get more and more sophisticated. You see, 5-year-old doesn't have the language skills that you and I have, see, or the vocabulary. See, so there's a lot of work to be done because they have to make many distinctions, and their brain is working on it.
Mm.
See, and they're making those distinctions. While they're making those distinctions in the language, by the way, they're creating it as a reality.
Mm.
And they're creating it as a reality that we share.
Mhm.
Because if they don't, we can't talk about it.
Mhm.
I have a thought. Now, you just understood what I said.
Mhm.
There's no reason on earth you should understand what I just said. I have a thought.
Right.
See? I mean, what am I talking about? It's I and having, and what is a thought?
Mm.
A thought. You say, well, show me this thought. Are you nuts? Didn't you get with the program? Come on. No, it's a thought. It's a concept. I can't show it to you. See?
Right.
You go, well, must be worthless then. Yeah, probably.
Wow.
Anyway, you following this? Yeah, that
Yeah.
leap has to be made.
Somewhat. I think what's really profound about it is that we all have to individually do this, and then it comes out as such a consistent, like agreed or shared upon reality. It seems like we all like formed this reality together, and then it's like so consistently that through the social domain. Like there's no adults walking around thinking the floor is lava. We've all kind of agreed on this, but we've all had to
Unless we're
individually.
playing a game where the floor is lava and we can't step on it.
Right. Right. Um, so yeah, it's just so yeah, staggering as well as that, you've had to individually do that. I've had to individually do that, create those distinctions so that when you say I have a thought, I know what that means. So um, yeah, it's just really, really profound.
If we don't do that, we can't participate in the social world,
Right.
at least to this degree, or this social world.
And there's a large survival component of if I can't participate in the social world, then I'm toast. Like this is a very important
We
thing.
very much are, especially in the modern age.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, cool. Um, so I'd like to move on to some more like practical, more kind of like human day-to-day life things. Um, First, I'd like to discuss relationships. So I'm curious about like because I know you do work on like communication and listening and really listening to, and that's something I've been working on that I got from you is like really listening. And it's actually really shifted and changed a lot of my relationships is like practicing this, like really getting their experience. And I've had some people actually give me feedback like, it really feels like you're trying to get my experience without me telling them what I'm doing. So it's really profound this listening, and you can really connect with people better and you actually learn more when you're listening actively. But yeah, I wanted to get your take on relationships and what's the best way to relate to relationships? Because I know some people like they're better off alone or they just want like one partner and like maybe two friends, and some people want a bunch of friends, and like what is the role of relationships? Do they feel a need, or is there no like, is it to share ideas? Is it to be creative together? Like what do you feel the point of relationships are, and like how to kind of relate to that?
Well, that's a long story.
Mm.
Um, let's go back to relationship itself. Relationship, this is going to be too hard. You're speaking about social relationships, interacting with other people,
Correct. Yeah. Like
right?
having friends or
Yeah,
family or lovers or
right, right. And needs. You need to breathe in order to live. You need to eat a little bit in order to live, that kind of thing. Say, do you need relationships? No,
Mm.
you don't need relationships. Now you say, but socially I do. Yeah, sure. But you see, you could be in the middle of space and you still have relationships and there's nobody around, right? Because you're missing people. That's a relationship. You have a relationship to people not being there. I'm all alone in outer space. No, see, like whatever. See, etc. Now you say like, yeah, some people prefer more solitude. Some people. Okay, there's different things going on with people, right? A lot of it is distraction. A lot of it is need, like emotional need. Many people, like for example, confuse need for love. Say, I need you. Uh-oh. You say, no, but I love you. No, no, that's not the same thing. Say, needing me is different than loving me. Say, and people don't understand the difference. But again, it's another podcast. All right. But so needing people around and the social thing, sometimes people need the validation in order to find themselves, to validate themselves, to feel real, to feel seen, whatever, right? Some people need the distraction because when they're alone, they're depressed. Why? Because they have something about themselves they don't want to look at, and when they're alone and mundane and simple, that comes up and they get depressed and they feel like they're really missing something. But if they get out there and get an adventure going and get people interacting, they're not depressed because they got stuff occupying their mind. Okay. So there's all kinds of reasons why people will choose one over the other. Yeah. Now, in a social sense, sure, you need a society in order for you to exist, but you've already done that. So you don't need them anymore. All humanity can be wiped out. You will probably think you're lonely, okay? That you'll miss all those people. Maybe you'll go batty because you don't have anybody to talk to. You'll start talking to the wall, okay? But so you don't need them to exist anymore. You're going to do that anyway. You're going to generate that anyway. So like you said, when you're in the mountains, et cetera, you're going to generate that anyway. If somebody becomes a mountain man, lives all by themselves for the vast majority of their lives, they have to come down for some supplies or whatever, but not much, and, decades of that, you see, they become very different social, you go visit them and they're not, hi, would you like to, they probably relate to this thing differently because they freed themselves of a lot of the superficial crap, that again, don't need. But in any case, I would say, because I think you're asking about, advice, I would say be complete. You want healthy relationships, be able to live with them or without them. That's called freedom. You can enjoy relationships and be with other people just like you can enjoy an ice cream, You can enjoy scratching an itch, et cetera, whatever. And you can enjoy not people. I said one time, I think I'm probably one of the few people that'd be okay in solitary confinement. Because not much would change. I mean, if I let my mind run amok, I could go down like, oh, I don't have freedom. I can't run around and do stuff. Yeah, run from this corner to that corner. What's the difference, huh? It's like, yeah, but I can't have dinner. They'll bring me dinner. Solitary confinement. See, but the thing is that need, and that's really hard for people. But again, we got workshops for that. See, that's really hard for people. It's like deep inside, you are complete without anything. You don't need anything. You're self-contained. You're whole, boom, done. And I'm not, it's mostly what you don't do to accomplish that. It's not what you do. People think I have to get complete. That means I have to accomplish all this psychological crap or spiritual crap or something, and I'll rise to the occasion and become complete. I'll finally fulfill myself and become bullshit. Eliminate all that crap of trying to fulfill yourself, like you talked about earlier, all that stuff of needs and stuff like that. And you will be complete because you already are complete. Just experience what's true. You know what I'm saying? See, and that's, to me, healthier way of relating. It's difficult, of course, because we live, all our relationships are social. It's just the social world. And we have to have social in order to relate if we're going to relate to other people. Okay? So we do that. There's a lot of stuff you don't have to do, and a lot of it's dysfunctional. A lot of stuff's not useful. Yeah. See, you don't need that. But you asked me that list about, what's the best way to live life?
Yeah, that was
So
the
let me
next
jump.
question.
Yeah, let me jump to that.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna you have to wrap up in another
Yeah, yeah.
2 minutes.
15 minutes.
But
Okay.
no worries. But in any case, live life. You see, as you know, I don't tell people how to live their lives.
Mm,
That's not my job. I tell people, I invite people and facilitate people to become conscious for themselves of what's true, period. How
mm,
you live is up to you. Say, I don't recommend. Now, standing on that, that's the disclaimer. Okay. So standing on the disclaimer, see, I say, look, what's the best way to live your life? Social. It's the same criteria that's been handed down by uh, Jesus, Buddha, whoever, Say, it's like that. It's adopt the principles that work. Love works because of the environment it creates, acceptance, honesty, work, right? Treating each other well works, etc. These things, right? It's not rocket science. Everybody knows.
mm,
You know, what would really work to have a healthy relationships and healthy life, healthy shared community. It's just that we've got this whole other world called selfish, and we are very attached to that because at the root of that selfish is self,
mm.
and all these principles I'm talking about the best way to live life, there's no self, or I should say it another way, self is included, but it's not the main thing. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
See? Like honesty kicks ass to self. See? It doesn't serve self, it serves itself, it serves honesty. And so when we adopt those principles, life works much more powerfully and effectively and much more healthy, mentally, physically, etc. Right? You see what I'm saying?
mhm,
See, it's like Buddha, he started off not talking, but then he got to talking. And then, pretty quick in there, according to legend, he never wrote anything down. We don't have any podcasts running. So he you started saying, look, do these things, to have the right thinking, right livelihood, do the right thing, etc. The same kind of deal. See, do those things. Okay, because you guys are just fucking ignorant. And so at least, do those things that you'll create a good community, a good life.
right.
Okay. Jesus, same kind of deal, right? Love thy neighbor,
Mm,
you know. You want to know, what shall we be like? Be like the Good Samaritan, the stranger, the foreigner who helped out somebody who wasn't of his own, that everybody in that tribe despised. And he helped them
mm,
be him, be like that. So,
mm,
it's a good, whatever story, to remember the principle involved there.
mhm,
Like I said, you and I would help anybody that, needed help.
mm,
Anyway, see, those things, it's obvious,
mhm.
right? Now,
Yeah.
the thing is, though, those are all survival issues. They don't cater to the self aspect, the selfish aspect solely. They cater to a different kind of reality, right? But see, none of them are the truth.
Mm,
They're just better ways to live. They're principles to live by.
mm.
See, and people confuse that. Oh, you're
Um,
enlightened, therefore you must do this, this, and this, and you
mhm.
have you have to talk like this, and you got to be like that, or whatever.
All right.
No, you don't.
Mm,
No, see, there's no rule book at all, because enlightenment isn't anything at all.
mm,
See, enlightenment, the one thing I didn't turn off. Anyway, enlightenment isn't, it's about the truth. So enlightenment is about the truth. It's not about you. It's not about how you live. It's not about what it can do for you. You understand? It's
mm,
about itself. It's about whatever is true, what's absolutely true, period.
mm,
That's all. And people keep trying to like, what's it going to do for me?
mm,
Wrong. See, wrong motivation. They grasp what's true. Like all this stuff we've been having conversation for quite a while. We've been having this conversation, right? All this stuff that I talk about, that you really like that. Where does that come from? It's coming. I got enlightened, and all of a
mm.
sudden I knew all this shit. No, but but it helps. Okay. See, enlightenment clears the decks because it allows you to see that none of it is real.
Mm,
So you can now start grasping what is being created, what is, what do we call reality, what, et cetera, perception, survival, self, et cetera, So I'm
mm,
saying, but
mhm,
that takes more work.
mm, mhm.
But again, you got a new book that's going to come out.
Yeah.
Now, last thing, because you asked on your little list you sent me, I'm sorry, the list you
Mhm.
sent me, about the 60s,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
if we had time. So
Mhm,
I'll just make a moment. Because it was funny. So like, I know it's like, I'm imagining,
mm,
so I'm imagining that you and a lot of your friends, so like, you hear about the 60s
mm.
in California, in Berkeley, San Francisco,
Yeah.
back there. See, I lived then. See, I was a teenager and a young adult then.
Mm,
See, and so I was in there. See, so you ask, okay, what was it like? Is it like the legend? Was it like the myth? You see, was it all, nirvana floating around and, spiritual? Yes and no.
mm,
Yes and no. Of course, there was lots of other stuff happening at the time, right? It was some challenging stuff, but the whole love child thing that turned into the hippies, that was
mhm,
very interesting stuff. And it was a very new way of thinking, and people took it seriously. We really did take it
mm.
seriously. We really thought the whole world was going to turn that way. Didn't happen. it,
Yeah.
it, it didn't work, but we really did. See?
Mm,
So, and we were working on actually doing that,
mm,
and failing, of course, and finding out that, well, maybe there's a reason for monogamy, maybe that has some validity because that was thrown out and then, okay, but then all kinds of problems. And yeah, but we're not mature enough for that, open kind of relationship. Most people anyway, aren't that mature, et cetera. Things like that, oh, maybe like I remember I went to Haight-Ashbury. You've heard of Haight-Ashbury,
yeah.
right? Back in the day. And there
Mm,
were actually stores all
mm,
around Haight-Ashbury that you could take what you wanted or what you needed.
mm,
Clothing stores, food stores, see, and then leave what you can. That was the
mm,
philosophy. Take what you need, leave what you can. The
yeah.
problem with it, of course, over time was people took more than they left.
Yeah.
And mostly, as you can imagine, a bunch of hippies, they became hippies. They don't have a lot. You know
Mm,
what I'm saying? I mean, the young people that were doing that and coming and flocking to the, park and everything like that for the, summer of love and all like that, they didn't bring a lot of possessions. So they didn't have a lot, okay, here, you can take my beads, and like that, let me take a coat, or whatever, So
mm,
the balance was off,
yeah, yeah.
So that didn't survive. But I thought it was a fascinating idea.
Mm,
The attempt was fascinating. I mean, I knew
mm,
right away it was going to survive because you can see the obvious flaws in the problem with humans.
yeah.
But it was interesting, like, wow, these people are really having a go at this.
Mm,
A whole world that they're trying to create from scratch, new agreements, new
mm,
ways of living. I think that's fascinating, you see.
mm.
And they won me over. It's like,
Wow.
yeah, I can. All right,
Mm.
like that song. Remember, what's wrong with peace, love, and understanding? It's like, yeah, yeah, how do you, yeah, what's wrong with that? I mean, you can't go, because there was a lot of counter resistance to that. He says,
Yeah.
why? Again, cut me off.
Yeah, yeah.
Why? Like, why? No, no, the other
Yeah.
way is a better way to go.
Mm,
Anyway, so yeah, it was a lot of really good times for sure. A lot of discovery, invention. I mean,
mm,
there's a lot of learning, a lot of new psychology was created there. All spiritual paths were pulled in and
wow.
tried out.
Mm,
Drugs for sure. Okay. But there was a distinction between consciousness raising drugs, like LSD and psilocybin and terrible tasting peyote and bad drugs, heroin and that kind of shit. See, now, there's a
mm,
distinction, right? Don't do the bad drugs, basically, do the good one for raising consciousness. Did it work?
mm.
No, it kicked ass for sure. There's a lot of ass kicking, but ask Timothy Leary if it really worked.
Yeah.
I mean, he went all in.
Yeah.
Remember, you heard Timothy Leary,
Yeah. Mm,
Okay. Yeah, he went all in. I mean, just
yeah.
so much acid every day, living in a place and I knew people that lived with him and stuff like that.
Wow.
But after years and years of that, he wanted to attain enlightenment
Yeah.
because you can't do it through drugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so
Huh.
there you go. There's my quickie version of 60s. I don't get to talk about nostalgia all that much, so I thought I'd throw that in.
Sweet. Thanks for that. I just want to ask, how are we doing on time? Like, do you have time for a few more questions? Or are you
I'm supposed to do something now.
okay? Okay.
Don't
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I definitely want to respect your time. Last question would be, what would you say is the core of the core of your work and like the one thing that if you could just display a message to all of humanity, what would you want to say to the human race and also, yeah, just like the core of all of your work and everything you've become conscious of.
All right, no pressure. Yeah, it's very simple. Uh, I, I, I would, I'll break this down into two parts because you asked kind of two questions there. Um, for me, of course, commit to the truth, period. Unbridled truth. Nobody wants to know what's true. They want to know what's good for them. Those are two different things. Saying you can't discover all this stuff I've discovered without committing to the truth, you see, completely grounded, open-ended, infinite, just the truth, whatever. You follow? Like whatever is absolutely true and relatively true, whatever. See, but the truth, period, on whatever level, in whatever way. And that takes a lot of work and introspection and contemplation, right? As far as humanity, I'll give the same advice I gave to, I had apprentices a long time ago, and they graduated. Um, and as they were graduating, I said basically three words: honesty, honesty, honesty. Now
Mm.
go forth and propagate. So it's like just be honest. Be honest with yourself, ruthlessly honest with yourself. And you can see how that aligns to a commitment to understand the truth, to grasp the truth, to become conscious of the truth,
Mm.
Yeah. And be open to possibilities too. Some people like this, like, no, it has to be this way, it has to be that way, or it has, no, it just has to be the truth. That's all. And grasping it, you have to hold as possible. Otherwise, the only option is then to go have a beer. All
Cool.
right. How's that?
Peter, thank you so much. It's been an honor talking to you and just personally, like, thank you so much for all your work. It's changed my life. I definitely plan on coming back to the center and seeing you in person again. And definitely looking forward to the new book, Whereof One Cannot Speak. You said coming out in 3 weeks, so I can't wait to grab that. And
Well,
yeah, thank you again.
let me
Yeah.
insert though, to anybody who might be listening, don't start with that book. All right. Don't start with Where One Cannot Speak. If you're interested in this kind of thing, start with the Book of Not Knowing, Pursuing Consciousness, Genius of Being, like those books, what we call the trilogy. Definitely the Book of Not Knowing. All right. Because if you start with Where One Cannot Speak and you haven't been educated through some of the basics, you're going to be flabbergasted, it's not going to make sense. Too
Mm.
much of it is not going to make sense. You might be able to pull out a thing or two, but I say right in the beginning of that book, this should not be your first book. Okay. Should not be your first book. Read my other books first,
Mm.
then take this on. So anyway, I just want to throw that in case somebody's like, "Oh, I'll get that book."
Yeah, absolutely. Like lay the foundation with Book of Not Knowing and maybe suffering and maybe mastery and then kind of work into that.
Sure.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Peter.
All
Have a
righty.
good.
Well, thank you. And people want to, like I say, get more information about this work, right?
Yeah,
They go
definitely.
to peterralston.com.
Hmm.
Peter Ralston, my name is Peter Ralston. peterralston.com, and answer all their questions, and then they'll be happy for the rest of their life.
Great. And you guys do workshops and you have the apprenticeship program at your center in Texas as well.
Yeah.
Um, so cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so
All right.
much.
Okay. Thank you.
See you
Good morning.
soon. Bye.